Hey guys, I'm Alan from DW and welcome to DW Soundworks. I've created a series of videos to help you get acquainted with the features and functionality we've packed into DW Soundworks, and I'm excited to get you started. So in this first video, I'll be doing a general overview of the entire application, and it'll help you better understand what the app can do for your DWE kit or even just music production in a DAW. Let's not waste any more time, let's jump right in. All right, let's take a look at the initial page that opens when you open Soundworks, and that is the drums page. You can see the button is depressed right here, and this is our drum page. I'm going to do a quick overview. Well, it probably won't be that quick, but it's going to be an overview of what you see here, how to find everything, what it does, and so forth and so on. I won't go into super deep depth on some things because we're going to have a dedicated video for like our articulations, our advanced mappings, favorites, set list, kit designer, instrument designer. All that's going to have its own video because of the depth of those subjects. But I am going to show you where to how to get to everything here and where to find stuff. So starting at the top left, we have our Soundworks menu. Settings leads you to your audio hardware settings. I'm personally using a Roland Studio Capture for my MIDI input. My API is Wasapi for my correction software, which is Sound ID Reference or SonarWorks. And the reason I bring those three things up is just to let you know that you don't have to just have one audio interface if you want to run separate things, or in a case like this where I want to use correction software, I can. The correction software then sends to my Mackie. So yeah, you have a lot of options here. You're not just kind of stuck with one thing. That's kind of cool. You have your sample rate here. You can change that as needed for DAW sessions or what have you. And then you have your buffer size here you can change as well. You can test for pops and clicks by clicking the test button. I won't put you through that torture. It plays a kind of a short but long loop so that you can listen for pops and clicks. And once you've got that dialed in, you can just select apply there. Now, before I do that, I do want to point out this icon if you ever see it. It's a speaker with a exclamation point. It'll pop up when you're setting your settings, but if you ever open Soundworks and you see that, it usually means that just something in your audio is out of sync. So I'll give you a couple examples. One would be like I work in the DAW at 88.2 quite often, and sometimes the DAW won't swap you back properly. My Mackie driver won't get swapped back from 88 to 44. And so if I open Soundworks and I see that, I usually know just go to my Mackie driver and flip it. Not a big deal. Another way you may see this is maybe if you don't have your system optimized and your USB power and your power profile is not disabled, it may put your audio interface connection to sleep. So that would be something to check. I'm just trying to think of examples. But if you ever see that, just come back into this little settings here and reset or verify and reapply. And then you'll see that little icon goes away, just like that. Moving on to our title bar, we have our drums button, obviously takes us to the drum page we're on. We have our mixer button, which takes us to our mixer page. We have our grooves, which I think you get the idea. And then we have this little cog wheel that takes us to some settings. I just kind of call this the player settings, which is going to be control over our dynamic response. We set that default to 85, which we feel is a very, very realistic level. But you can adjust this as needed. It is global. You do not have to do this per preset. So if you feel you need to drop it or raise it 5 or 10 or whatever, you can do that here and it will stick. Next one is layer blending. That's on by default, and I would just suggest leaving that on. It just means that you're allowing the application to borrow samples above and below where you're playing to make it much more realistic as your MIDI number kind of jumps around there. Yeah, it just makes things much more realistic. So that's a nice little touch. Disk streaming is on by default. 99% of us will use that because we're making changes quite often. If you are in the situation where maybe you're just using it in the DAW to record in the studio, you're not changing anything and you want to load everything into RAM, you could turn this off. But I will say that if you do make changes, it takes longer to reload because, again, it's loading everything instead of just getting you started and then loading as it's going, streaming. If you're gigging and using one single kit, never changing anything, you may want to turn it off. It's all about whether you want to task your drive or not. That's all it is, and if you have plenty of RAM. Voice limit, you can change that down as desired. I don't think many of us will touch that. Autosave, I have it off. I think it comes on as default, but I like to turn it off because I like to make my own choices when it comes to saving. But if you're the type that loads a kit, gives it its own name, and then starts making changes, you might want to turn or leave on autosave. And then we have a GUI scale here from 85 to 200. I'm using 150 for this video, but you can adjust that for your screen, obviously. And we have a rescan libraries button in case you add, change, update, whatever libraries while the app is open, which I would not suggest. But generally, closing the app and reopening the app will rescan the libraries at the same time. We have a little short transport bar here, stop, pause, and play. This is really cool because you can come over here to our grooves page, which I'm in, grab a verse, drop it in, bring it to the beginning, and then you can play it. But even better is you can go over to your mixer, and if you're doing some mixing, like say I want to work on a compressor for the bass drum, I can solo my bass drum, hit play, and now I can come over here and make my changes to my compressor. So that's really cool, and stop it as you wish. Anytime you want to get rid of that, you just click that X and get rid of it. The next little window here is going to give you some performance information. I like to look at the top two bars there as it's your CPU monitoring. And I kind of look at those like LUFS meters, if you will. Your top one is basically like your integrated long-term, if you will, average, what's tasking your system. So it's always going to be pretty low unless you have a problem. The bottom one is more of your instance. If you use that as an example, where it'll show you what's happening in real time. As you can see, they're really, really low. My system is very optimized. Most of the time, average, you'll see like the bottom one will be somewhere in the middle. The top one may come up just a hair more than that right there. But this basically can alert you to any optimization issues, and then we can help you try to narrow down what that might be and improve your situation. The bottom two boxes here give you MIDI data, input data. So if you're assigning a pad and from a module or something and you need to see what that is so you can assign it properly, you'll get that data here. It will not show with me hitting something here. It will show from input only. The next box here is our kit preset box. To see the list of presets, you simply just click the name and you'll see you can scroll down through here and see all our presets. You can see the preset name, pack that comes from, the author, which if you give it your own initials like that, you'll have that. And then you have your genre and your ambience that either the factory or you choose at will. While I'm here on the right side, you have stars for adding to your favorites list at the bottom. And then if you want to add to a set list, you have the little set list right there. And finally, we have our little save button right here. So if you make a change and you hit save, you can give it a new name, your author, your genre, and your ambience. Has my author name because I put that in there earlier. You hit save. I'm not going to do that right now. But what that will do is not only save your preset, but it will also give you a preview to listen to. So when you're looking for a kit later on, you have this little preview on the left side so you can listen to what the kit sounds like. And if you don't want that one, you want something a little bit drier. So you have some previews to go by. Moving onward, we have an up and down button. The up button will take you to the previous preset. In this case, it's raw, and the down button will take you back to where I was, which is the studio kit. To the right of that, we have our solo and mute clear buttons. Let me go over to the mixer and show you how those work. If I solo some stuff like this, maybe mute some ambience mics, you can click your solo clear and all those solos will disappear, and your mute clear and all those mutes will clear. It's really handy in case you have microphones muted or soloed and it's covered up like this. You can just randomly clear these buttons out and it'll ensure that you're not missing something. Above that, you have your main fader, which you can see is tied to the main fader at the bottom right of the mixer page. And anytime I move one, it moves the other. And if I control click one, it will control click the other as well. And lastly, on this title bar, we have our actual title, which is Soundworks. And it'll show you your version number, which you can just keep reference of in case an update is announced and you don't know if you got it or not. There's also some linkage there to some social media. Back to our drums page. On both sides, we have some roll-up panels. The left side is quick controls, the right side is articulations, and you have roll-up in case you're like gigging and you don't want them in your face. You can roll those up. I just leave them down 24/7, but any instrument that you choose will show up in both sides, and then you can do some quick adjustments here. On the left side, it's basically your mixer for that instrument. If you watch and I change an instrument, you'll see it's changing for each channel of those instruments that I was choosing. You have your panning left and right, solo and mute. Whether it's going to your main, obviously this is going to be on 99.9% of the time. You have your fader for that instrument, and then you have your effects modules. Now, before I go further, I want to say that that left side there is basically your direct channel strip, meaning your direct mics, that's the channel strip for those direct mics. Your overheads and your ambients are bussing somewhere else. So just keep that in mind. I will cover this in the mixer video for sure. But you have reverse phase here. If you have some reason to swap left and right, you can do that here. You have your EQ, your compressor or dynamics module, saturator or saturation, reverb, and then our sends, if you want to send to a parallel compressor or a reverb or what have you. At the bottom of the fader, you have some meters. In the kit view here, you'll see it goes to about -14. That's level 13 actually, because this velocity here is 100. This velocity here and over here is 127. So you'll see that I'm doing more closer to my gain stage of -10. Speaking of gain stage and our next button here, if you're the type of person like me, gain stages to peak hits at -10, you're good to go. But if you like it lower, like -12, come up to your instrument volume. This is all your samples. You pull that back a couple of dB, like so. And now your gain structure will be this one. Now your gain structure will be closer to 12. Now I just caution you to do that first because that does affect what's feeding your dynamics and your compression. I personally just like to leave things at -10, so I leave things at 0. You can solo or mute the entire instrument so that it will not play. It's basically just picking up features from the mixer page. So likelihood of you solo or muting something here would be only if you're playing a groove for mixing and you just happen to be on the kit page instead. We have a tuning slider here that you can tune the snare up however you desire. And then we have access to our mic groups direct. And then you don't have to go back and forth each time like this. You can actually use this little blue down arrow here or just click the name and go to the next set and adjust these as you desire. Finally, we have routings. But all this stuff that I just went over, I'm going to be going into depth in the mixer video, and I will cover routings in that one a little bit more in depth. The center panel here with your kit is basically a representation of what you've built or what we've built for you. So you can see that some things have not been populated and obviously some things have. In the top right corner, we have access to our X pads. Just think of those as extra pads or extra sounds like layers. So if you want to click one of these and assign a snare drum to layer on top of this snare drum, you can do that and then do all the mixing as well here. But I will not get into that right now. We'll get into that later on in another video. But you can also assign to extra pads that are coming in, feeding into X pads here on the mixer. At the bottom of this window, you'll see we have an ellipsis menu. I'll come back to that in a second. We have the kit view, which we are on at the moment. And then we have cell view, where if you want to listen to the range of an instrument, you can do that as well. The ellipsis menu give you the save and load dialog that you have at the top, but it's a little bit different. This one allows you to actually go into your computer system and save where you want or load from wherever you want. So if you share a kit with someone, a preset with someone, or they share something with you and it's on your desktop, you can grab it from there, load it, and then resave it to your personal documents through the menu at the top. You can clear a kit, start from scratch. And then we will cover this one, saving kit libraries. We'll cover that in another video where we go over the instrument designer and creating your own samples and so forth. On the right, we have our articulations panel. Again, it rolls up if you need to roll it up. It gives you access to all your previews for all your articulations. So you'll see here I've already adjusted some volumes to make them even, or at least kind of even as far as what I feel is realistic when I'm playing. So default is -6, but you'll see I dropped some things down. You can learn MIDI here in case you're using a different pad coming in. We'll go through that in a more in-depth advanced video. The top right gives you a hamburger menu that will give you access to advanced mappings. I'm going to have a whole video on this and how important it is to start here when you do a kit fresh from scratch and why I like to come to this page first. Next page is MIDI CC settings. This would just be for like setting some of your settings for your zones and ranges and so forth and so on. We'll cover that in another video as well. And then playback options allow you to add snare buzz. You can turn it on, shorten it, decays, or what have you, and give it a value and which instruments you want it on, as well as control how much your pitch bending on your instruments goes, how far. Moving down to the bottom panels, we have our favorites. I showed you earlier that we can add favorites just by simply clicking some stars up here. I'll do like 5 and close that. Now also in the favorites list, I can rearrange by just grabbing these little diamonds and moving them however I want to move my stuff around, like that. And I can get rid of them by clicking the red X's like that. I will cover that more in depth in another video. Set list I will also show in another video as well, but quickly going over this, we have a metronome on the left side. Clicking it starts it, clicking it stops it. You can control your BPM, time signature, your level. We have 3 sounds to choose from. Clave is the best though. And then you can turn on your accent on 1 or off, and your output you can choose. I'm just going to this Mackie 2 channel, so I only have 2 channels to choose from at the moment. In the in-depth video, I will show you how to add presets to build your own set list, save that set list, load that set list, and show you how to use the metronome with the set list so that you can flawlessly move through each song with your band and have your tempos given to you in between songs ready to go. It's really cool, so look forward to that video. Next tab is our kit designer. This is where you actually build your kit. So let's say I want to change out some toms here. All you do is simply come over here to the library that you want to use, like Pure Almond. You can preview here, and it is picking up the mixing that you see here. So if you have a clear kit and there's no mixing, then you would hear the raw drum itself. So you can listen to the before with the mahogany tom, and you can listen to the almond with the mixing. And if you want to change that, you just click assign right here. If you want more info, you click the info button. It'll give you all the info about the instrument, what it is, model, shell, size, the mics we used, and so forth. You can click the X to get out, or just click on anywhere in the window there. To assign it again, just click the assign. Now I have my almond tom. And you can quickly go to the next one and choose it. Next one, choose it. Next one, choose it. And last one, choose it. Now I've got all new toms with a mahogany kick and snare. This is just a dry, clean kit. Finally, we have our instrument designer here on the right. The reason it's blanked out right now is because this is where you will design your own instrument. So over here, you grab a blank instrument, cymbal, cowbell, snare. Now you'll see I have access to it. I'll click on it. And this is where you can create your own sampled instrument that you've got your own samples for. You can name it here in this box. I'll just leave that alone. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do it. Snare 2, I'll call it. That's going to be on instrument 11, or sorry, instrument 20. You can choose what it is, the category, which should be a snare. Position is obviously a snare. You can choose to add more information like we do in ours. You can give it the make, the model, the shell, the size, and the heads that you sampled yourself. How many layers you sampled, if you did 8 or 12 or 16, or it's just a one shot. You can choose articulation that it is. So if you sampled the center of a snare or an edge, you can make multiple, obviously, because you're going to be assigning it to a zone, if you will. And then you can have your sample groups. So if you have multiple mics like we do, you can choose what that is and then which microphone it is, 1 through 5. So just like our stuff, if you come over here to mixer and look at this snare here, you've got direct mics, 1, 2, 3. Overhead mics 1 and 2, ambient mics 1 through, I think that's 4. So if I go back over here, you'll see I can put it in a group. Direct mic, if you did like we did, you can do direct mic and which mic that is, 1 through 5, or ambience 1 through 5. Pretty cool. Drop your samples in here. Like I said, you can do as little as one shots, or you can do multiple round robins across, I believe it was 18 layers, it looks like. So yeah, pretty cool. We'll cover this in another video for sure. So that's going to do it for this video. I've gone through everything on this page. Like I said, we're going to go into vast depth on the articulations, especially the advanced mappings, and then we will go more in depth on the favorites, set lists, a kit designer, making a kit, and then our mixer and our remaining pages as well. Okay, let's take a look at our mixer page. Our mixer page is pretty simple, pretty easy to follow. So starting at the top, we have our overall instrument input gain. This is the control for the volume of all your microphones. So anything you change here is going to affect the input of like dynamic compressor. So if you are mixing and you do your compression first and then you come back and change this, it will change the input to your compressor as well, so be careful of that. I usually leave these at 0, do all my mixing first. If I run into anything that I feel I need to change the overall sample input, then I will go up there and change that, but it's extremely rare that I would change those. They all have solo and mute buttons as well. This would solo the entire chain that you see here, or it would mute the entire chain here. The difference between this solo and your solo at the bottom is that the solo at the bottom will solo your direct mic group only. Remember, this is like a channel strip for your direct mic, and your overheads and your ambients are sent to their own buses. Moving onward, we have a tuning slider here for each instrument. So you can tune that as desired here, or you can tune it back here on the kit as well. We have access to all 3 of our mic groups. If you click an arrow, you can get in there and mix mics however you please. You can also quickly change between the 3 groups, or you can go back and do it manually if you wish. We have solos and mutes for all 3 of those as well, and knobs to control the overall mix of the entire group at once. You have some routing options where you can, if you want to really get custom as far as routing live or in the studio, you can come in and change some of these to auxiliaries if you need to, or other buses should you want to. Moving on, we have what I would call basically our directs, direct out, so you can choose where to send an instrument in case you're, again, doing some live work or studio work. You can send it to a specific output as desired, and then you can also turn off a main signal if you ever need to the main here that you may want to be listening to. Generally speaking, if you're playing live, you're probably going to want to send this main to the main and monitor that from your laptop. If you are more on a pro level where you're sending to front of house and they're sending you a monitor mix, then you may want to turn all that off just to save some resources. You have your panning here, access to you as well as you do over in the drums with the single instruments. And then, like I said, we have basically our direct channel strips at the bottom for each instrument. So like for your snare here, we have a solo for the direct mics. We have a mute. So let me let you hear what that sounds like. If I play a snare now, if I solo here, I'm going to get everything. However, if I solo the direct right here, I should get just the direct, because you can see it has muted our overhead and ambience automatically. You can also solo the overhead by itself, which I would do that. So now I'm hearing just the overhead, or I can clear those and just do my overhead instead. Just same signal. And the exact same thing goes for the ambience as well. So keep in mind that those solos and mutes also will affect what's being sent over to buses here, like your parallel comp or maybe a parallel verb or auxiliary verb. Moving onward, we have access to our phase reversal. We can flip if it's a stereo channel. So those are mostly going to be on buses. You have an EQ, dynamic compressor, saturation options, and a reverb. And then you finally have sends where you can send to parallel comp or a reverb. I always suggest that you just keep your effects like reverb and whatnot on sends so that you can consolidate them down and use less resources. You have channels 1 through 10 here with your 3 main buses, your overhead, your ambience, and your main. You have 10 more channels. You still have access to your 3 buses. You have X pads, which you can control here once you assign them. So if you're layering like a snare over a snare on pad 1, you can come in here and also mix that one as well. You have your auxiliary buses if you want to send to auxiliary buses. If you want to group things, you can do that here. And then you have typical sends for like your parallel comp and your verb as needed. Finally, the buses, pretty much the same as all the instruments, with the exception of, the top part is missing here. You have your panning, should you need it. Same output options, same main output options, solo and mute, just like I showed you. You have phase reversal as well here. I would caution you about using phase reversal here, as it will affect everything, obviously. So be sure that if you find a need or desire to reverse a phase on a mic, just do it in the mic rather than down here on a bus. You can reverse these. So if you're left-handed and you're playing a kit, you can simply come to your main channel and reverse that. And then you have your same EQ, dynamics, saturation, and reverb on all the buses as well. Okay, now let's take a look at our Grooves page in Soundworks. So it's also called the Grooves browser, as you can see here. I just call it the Grooves page. On the left side, we have our pack, our library list. These will be all the libraries that you've downloaded from us. Each pack, as you can see in the next column, comes with a couple of different styles. And then there will be a name for each style under section, and then we have all our patterns on the right that come in each pack. You have a preview button here for anything you want to play. You have bridges, choruses, endings, fills, intros, pre-choruses, solos, verses. You have pretty much everything you can think of. You can also edit these. We'll do that in just a moment, but basically you can preview up here. You can drag these down into the composer. You can choose the cut tool here to cut them as desired. It will turn blue. And wherever your mouse is with that little line above there hovering, that will cut. You turn the cut tool back off and you can delete this. Then you can move this as needed. You can do that with any of these, obviously. You have your zoom in tool here, and you can use your mouse as well, your mouse wheel. Composer has a few options. You can save a composition you create. You can load a composition that you have created. These are saved in a composition file extension. So it's a little bit different than just exporting a MIDI, which I'll show you in just a second. And then you can clear the composition as needed. So you can drag multiple patterns down. Let's go ahead and do that as well. I'm just going to drag some random ones down here. And I'm going to shorten them. We'll just do a couple bars there, and we'll do an ending. And we'll do a couple bars there. Okay, you have flags here that you can turn on for looping and drag that out to the, if I can grab it, to the length of your composition. And then I will go through the transport bar and show you how we can export those. So we have our transport bar here where we can play, pause, and stop. We can also loop. Autoplay is for anything you choose up here. So if you have autoplay on and you choose something, this is good if you want to audition some stuff, like you want to find the verse feel that you're looking for. You can play it, listen to it, go to the next one, go to the next one. It's really good for endings too. Start listening for what you're looking for and play those out and see if they have the ending you're looking for. I would advise you to make sure you turn it back off when you're done. So moving onward, we do have access to the your signature, time signature, your tempo, and your snapping. You can choose a few different snappings. You can change the tempo to whatever you wish. Moving onward, we have halftime, playback speed. We have regular time, and then we have 2 times. And then we have our low dynamics. You can control how low your lowest notes are. So if you want to bring that hi-hat back up a little bit. Or you can control how hot the hottest hits are. You can bring that down a little bit. So you'll see we have a button here that is highlighted. That's to the DAW. I'll come back to that one in just a moment. But we can export our MIDI right here. Just simply click that, choose your desktop, give it a name, and hit enter. And you'll see right here, it is saved to my desktop. You can also export the wave. You can choose different presets and try different sounds. Get the one you want, and then export the wave. As far as DAWs go, I'll open up Studio One real quick in the background, and Exporting to a DAW is really super simple. Come over to your DAW, start a new project, and just simply drag that button right up into your project. Once you have that open, just go over to your instruments in your DAW and drag Soundworks on top of it. And you can double click it in Studio One and see it down here. I can change to, let me close that for a second. I can change to my drum roll and change to my Soundworks mapping and have everything right there in front of me. Swap to my mix, and we will go in depth in this a little bit more, how to explode it out into separate channels and so forth and so on. Hey, thanks for sticking around. I'm glad you made it this far, and I hope our video helped you. I hope I was able to shine some light on a lot of the features in Soundworks that'll help you get started making your own presets. Please be sure, if you haven't already, to go ahead and subscribe below so that you can get notified of upcoming tutorials. I'm going to have probably several more come out that'll help you dig even deeper into Soundworks. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.